This is the Stick in the Mud podcast, episode 1. Today, we'll be talking about what a mud is and what the plan is for this podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to Stick in the Mud podcast. I'm your host, Tark. This is our first episode, so I just want to say thanks for choosing to listen to us. The Stick in the Mud podcast is released once a week on Wednesdays, and notes for the show can be found at www.stickinthemudpodcast.com. You can find us on iTunes, even follow us on Twitter at MudPodcast. All of the links are in the show notes, so let's go ahead and talk muds. So, first off, what exactly is a mud? Well, MUD stands for Multi-User Dungeon, and they allow players from around the world to get together online, go on adventures, kill goblins, slay dragons, rescue princesses. Just like, really, the current generation of MMORPG games. And it's due to these similarities, and the fact that they've been around a lot longer, that most people consider MUDs to be the grandfathers of the current MMOs. And now the funny thing is that MMOs do share a lot of the same content and features that have been around MUDs for probably longer than those MMOs themselves have been around. There's PvE content. In a lot of MUDs, you can go out, find the horrible necromancer lord, kill him, take his stuff, and go home and do it again the next week. Sounds just like raiding, right? And then there's also the usual quests for equipment, quests for gold, going out, grinding on mobs that, you can kill easily enough, not really a challenge, just get more experience and more levels. MUDs also are host to PvP content, and honestly, I tend to like PvP on MUDs a lot more than I've ever liked them in any graphical MMO. But what if you're not much for killing or combat? Well, there's role-playing and socializing. Just like RP servers on current MMOs, MUDs, instead of having an RP server, tend to just actually be an RP server. If, of course, they're a roleplay enforced or a roleplay, encouraged game. And, well, what if, like me, you really enjoy the crafting systems in today's MMOs? Well, MUDs have them. They also have things like pet battles, gambling, the usual guilds and clans that you're used to from other online games. But probably, in my opinion, the best feature of MUDs versus, say, World of Warcraft, is the fact that a MUD is a dynamic changing world, or at least it can be if that's what the creators have in mind. Several games I've played allow you to actually leave your mark on the world, become part of its history, instead of being, Orc Rogue number 700,612 that went out and slayed Arthas. Now thinking about it, a lot of MUDs today, similar to MMOs, are set in fantasy universes. Wizards, warriors, magic, princesses to be rescued. Just as common as they are in MMOs today, they're also here in MUDs. But that's not the only setting out there. I've played MUDs, personally, that have been set in the Star Wars universe, have taken place in the Shadowrun universe, the Old West, medieval Europe, the Lord of the Rings universe, settings from Dungeons and Dragons. Pretty much, if it's a setting, if it's a world that people have read about, seen on TV, or the like, odds are someone has a MUD that will cater to that audience. Heck, I even know there's a roleplay intensive Firefly MUD out there. So like I mentioned before, MUDs are text-based. So instead of having, pixels and polygons on the screen, what you're going to see is pure 100% text. So if you're the type that loves novels, or reading in general, MUDs will definitely be up your alley. Now you might be saying, well, why should I play a MUD and have to read when I can just sit down and play WoW or play whatever other MMO is popular right now? I honestly don't know. I haven't looked at the market in years. And to me, the thing is you've got the best GPU ever already in your possession. And as lame as it's going to sound, it's your imagination. And don't get me wrong, designers and whatnot from big companies do a great job at creating their static, always going to look the same guys. But just like reading a good book versus watching adaptation of it on HBO, things are just going to look better in your head. there's a certain look that I have in mind for characters from the Wheel of Time series. And that's not going to match what you have in your head. And it's definitely not going to match what a Hollywood producer decides, hey, we're going to have this guy play Rand al'Thor. So thanks to that lack of graphics, you're actually able to get a bit more attached and just a bit more into the game itself. So let's talk the origin story of MUDs. MUDs, really kind of came about first in a game called Adventure, made in 1976 by Don Woods. And it contained many Dungeons & Dragons features and references, like, a computer-controlled dungeon master. And then inspired by the game Adventure, a group of students at MIT in the summer of 1977 wrote a game called Zork. Most people, have heard of Zork at least at some point. And again, it's one of those games where you type in commands and attempt to either solve the adventure or solve the mystery or puzzle that the programmers put in place. Then in 1978, Roy Trubshaw, who was a student at Essex University, started working on a multi-user adventure game. He named the game MUD, Multi-User Dungeon. It was actually in tribute to a variant of Zork that he had enjoyed playing. Now eventually, Trubshaw ended up handing over the development to the game to Richard Bartle, who was a fellow student at Essex University in 1980. And that game revolved around gaining points, or experience as we call it today, until you achieved the wizard rank, which gave the character immortality and special powers over mortals. Eventually, MUD ended up running on the Essex University network and became more widely accessible when a guest account was set up that let users on Janet, which was a British academic computer network, to connect on the weekends between the hours of 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. on weekdays. And it ended up becoming the first internet multiplayer online role-playing game in 1980 when Essex University connected its internal network to ARPANET. Now, of course, there's more and more we can go on about the history of MUDs, with different code bases, different games, influential games. But for right now, I really do think that that'll suffice for the history today. So now, let's talk about what my plan is for the podcast here. What I really want to do, like I said initially, is draw attention to MUDs. A lot of people call them a dying game genre, and I really think that's not true. I mean, sure, MUDs by no means draw the numbers they did 10, 15, 20 years ago, but I still think that there's a market for the ability to allow players to have the exact character they want, not be constrained by, what designers just have available for you to pick from. With that all being said, I intend to include MUD reviews, where I'll probably play a MUD for about a week or so, write up my thoughts on it, and just, let the general public know, hey, here's what I liked about the game, here's what I didn't like. I also eventually want to start having the movers and shakers from the MUD world on, either the folks that are running very successful, very long-established MUDs, folks that had to do with the initial development of MUDs. And then, of course, I also want to get to talk to players, talk to them about what they look for in a MUD, what MUDs have hooked them, what MUDs failed to hook them, and why that was. Eventually, I'd also like to get developers on from lesser-known MUDs who want to come on, promote their product, especially after I've spent some time playing it, so we can talk about the various features. And just try to provide a one-stop shop for anything and everything MUD-related and at least mildly entertaining. So with that, I think this is going to go ahead and conclude the first episode of the Stick in the Mud podcast. I'd just like to say thanks to the Reddit/MUD community for the idea of doing this podcast in the first place, along with the guys from there that frequent the Discord channel who have been nothing but awesome in encouragement and just, sitting there going, yeah, this is a good idea to do. And I'd like to give a big thanks to our sponsor, Opie, over at funcity.org. Opie frequents the MUD Discord channel and offered to take care of hosting, domain, and really everything else that was going to incur costs for the podcast. And he's also been integral in getting the website set up and running and just making sure everything's gone smoothly. Now, I'd like to be able to grow this podcast, people that don't play MUDs. So if you want to go ahead and rate us, leave us a review on iTunes or on Stitcher, and just, share the podcast with other people you think might be vaguely interested in the genre, that'd be great. So I want to say thanks for listening, and have fun slaying dragons.